Welcome back to Lore 2 Dream. Tonight, we venture into one of science fiction's most evocative settings, a universe where humanity reached for the stars and nearly fell into eternal darkness. We're diving deep into the lore of destiny, exploring the mysterious arrival of an entity that changed everything, the Traveler, and the birth of the warriors who would become humanity's last hope, the Guardians. This is a story about transformation, sacrifice, and the price of survival. It begins with wonder and ends with resurrection. So settle in, let your mind drift among the stars, and let us journey through the Golden Age, the collapse, and the Dark Age that followed. By the end of this odyssey, you'll understand how death became the beginning of humanity's greatest defenders. The universe of destiny exists in a future that branches from our own timeline. In the present day, we are familiar with Mars as a cold, dusty world, its surface scarred by ancient riverbeds and wind-carved valleys. Venus is a hellish pressure cooker, wrapped in sulfuric acid clouds. Mercury is a barren rock, scorched by solar radiation. These are dead worlds, inhospitable to human life, places we might visit with robots, but never call home. But all of that was about to change. Sometime in the early 21st century, perhaps around the year 2014, astronomers detected something unprecedented. An object, massive and spherical, had entered the solar system. It moved with purpose, traveling from world to world in a pattern that defied natural explanation. This was no asteroid, no comet following a predictable orbit carved by gravity's hand. This object moved as though guided by intention, by choice, by something approaching consciousness. The sphere first visited Jupiter, the gas giant whose storms have raged for centuries. Then it moved inward to Mercury, the closest planet to our Sun. From there, it traveled to Venus, shrouded in its dense atmosphere. At each world, something extraordinary occurred. The planets began to change, not slowly, as geological processes unfold over millions of years, but rapidly, dramatically, impossibly. Climates shifted, atmospheres transformed. The very nature of these worlds rewrote itself in ways that violated everything humanity understood about planetary science. Humanity watched with a mixture of fear and fascination. This object, this visitor from beyond known space, was terraforming the solar system. Scientists, philosophers, and ordinary people grappled with questions that had no easy answers. Was this entity alive? Was it a machine? Was it both, or neither, or something for which we had no proper category? What were its intentions? Was it benevolent, preparing worlds for humanity's expansion? Or was this simply an incomprehensible process in which we happened to be caught? Humanity gave the sphere a name. They called it Moon X in official documents, a placeholder designation that betrayed how little was truly understood. But among the people, another name took hold, one that would echo through the centuries to come. They called it the Traveler. The name carried weight, implying agency and purpose. This was not merely an object. This was something that traveled, that chose destinations, that arrived with transformative power. As the traveler completed its work on the outer worlds, humanity realized it was heading toward Mars. If the pattern held, Mars would be next. And so, in an act of courage or perhaps recklessness, humanity decided to reach out, to make contact, to be waiting when the traveler arrived. A mission was hastily assembled. They called it Ares I, named for the ancient god of war who gave Mars its name, and for the audacity of being humanity's first attempt to communicate with an intelligence utterly unlike anything we had encountered. The crew consisted of 3 individuals. Commander Jacob Hardy led the mission, a man described as privileged to be part of humanity's most important endeavor. M. Mihailova, a brilliant scientist who had been working on artificial intelligence systems as part of something called Project Catamaran, and Ulysses Chow, the mission's navigator, a steady hand to guide them through the uncertainties ahead. There had been a 4th crew member, Evie Calumet, a physicist whose job was to predict the traveler's movements, to understand its pattern. But tragedy struck before launch. Evie died in an accident involving an electrical fire, weak sprinklers, and a wet staircase. The circumstances were suspicious enough that some wondered if it was truly accidental. The mission had been originally named Project Catamaran, but after Evie's death, they renamed it Ares I. The launch was delayed by a single day. The 3 remaining crew members were armed, a telling detail that spoke to the uncertainty of what they might encounter. The journey to Mars took place during the planet's transformation. As Ares I descended through the turbulent atmosphere, the crew witnessed something that would be remembered for generations. They reached the top of a ridge and saw the traveler for the first time at close range. The massive white sphere hung in the Martian sky, and beneath it, the impossible was unfolding. Rain fell on Mars. Not a light drizzle, but torrential rain. Water cascading from newly formed clouds, striking the ancient dust and beginning the process of awakening a dead world. The traveler was making it rain on the desert planet, creating an atmosphere where none should exist, establishing the conditions for life in a place that had been sterile for billions of years. Commander Hardy, witnessing this display of power, believed they were seeing the key to humanity's advancement. He was correct, but he could not have imagined just how profound that advancement would be, nor how terrible the price humanity would eventually pay. First contact between humanity and the traveler remains somewhat mysterious. The details are fragmentary, lost to time, or perhaps never fully recorded. But what followed is undeniable. The traveler did not speak in words, at least not in any conventional sense. Instead, it taught through demonstration, through the sharing of knowledge that seemed to pour directly into human understanding. The traveler gave humanity access to technologies that made our previous achievements look primitive by comparison. It shared knowledge that overruled laws of physics previously considered absolute. It revealed mystical technologies that blurred the line between science and something that might as well be called magic. This was paracausal power, the ability to violate cause and effect to achieve outcomes that should be impossible. With the traveler's gifts, humanity entered what would be remembered as the Golden Age, an era of unprecedented prosperity and expansion that would last for approximately 2 centuries. The Golden Age transformed human civilization in ways both profound and practical. Consider first the most personal change. Human lifespans tripled. People who might have lived 70 or 80 years could now expect to survive for 200 years or more. This alone revolutionized society, allowing individuals to master multiple disciplines, to accumulate wisdom across centuries, to see their descendants through generations. But the changes went far beyond longevity. Technology advanced at a pace that would have seemed fantastical before the travelers' arrival. Humanity developed glimmer, a form of programmable matter that could be transmuted into almost anything, limited only by imagination and knowledge. We created the Exos, mysterious humanoid machines shaped in humanity's image, though the exact origins and purposes of these synthetic beings remain unclear even to the Exos themselves. We perfected artificial intelligence, creating thinking machines of astounding sophistication. Among these was an intelligence codenamed R, heavily implied to be the war mind called Rasputin, perhaps the most powerful and complex artificial mind humanity ever created. We developed warp drive technology, allowing ships to travel faster than light, making journeys that should take lifetimes achievable in days or weeks. We learned to harness fusion power, creating directed energy weapons and unlimited clean energy. We discovered how to encode matter itself into crystalline structures called engrams, packages of encrypted materials that could be decoded and materialized when needed. With the traveler terraforming the worlds and humanity armed with these revolutionary technologies, we spread across the solar system. Mars became home to great cities, centers of learning and culture rising where only rovers had tread before. Venus transformed into a garden world, its crushing atmosphere tamed, its surface covered in lush vegetation and gleaming arcologies. Mercury, closest to the Sun, became habitable despite the searing heat. The Moon was colonized, research facilities and settlements spreading across its surface. Even Jupiter hosted human civilization, though some scholars in the later City Age would question whether the records of Jovian colonies were literal or metaphorical. The asteroid belt became a treasure trove of wealth, an untapped reservoir of minerals and rare elements that fueled an economic boom. Colony ships carried humanity's dreams to these distant worlds, each vessel a seed of civilization, ready to take root in soil made fertile by the traveler's touch. Venus held particular significance during this age. The planet hosted the Ishtar Collective, a research organization that pushed the boundaries of understanding. Their archives on Venus would become legendary, repositories of knowledge that alien races would later seek to plunder. The Ishtar scientists studied everything from the nature of reality itself to the strange Vex machines that inhabited Venus. Though the full story of the Vex and their relationship to the Golden Age remains complex and disturbing, Mars saw the rise of Clovis Bray, a corporation or perhaps an individual. The records are unclear. That represented the pinnacle of Golden Age ambition, Clovis Bray's facilities dotted Mars, centers of research into everything from weapons to artificial life to technologies that would prove both wondrous and dangerous. The Dust Palace on Mars, a Clovis Bray facility, would later become a target for the Cabal, suggesting the value of whatever secrets it contained. On Earth, life flourished in ways both familiar and transformed. Cities grew into gleaming metropolises, their architecture reflecting the aesthetic possibilities unlocked by new materials and construction techniques. Humanity had not merely survived. We had transcended previous limitations. We had become something greater, reaching toward a future that seemed to promise endless possibilities. The Golden Age was aptly named. This was humanity's brightest hour, a time when anything seemed possible, when the universe itself appeared to be opening its doors and inviting us to step through. But embedded within this golden prosperity were seeds of darkness that humanity did not recognize or perhaps chose to ignore. The traveler had an enemy. Across the vast distances of space, through the eons of cosmic time, something had been following the traveler. Something ancient, implacable, and utterly inimical to the vision of complexity and diversity that the traveler represented. This force, this entity or collection of entities, would come to be known by many names: the darkness, the deep, the Black Fleet, the Witness and its servants. Whatever we chose to call it, the fundamental nature remained the same. If the traveler represented the principle of growth, of preservation, of allowing life to flourish in all its chaotic and beautiful forms, then the darkness embodied the opposite. It was the winnower, the reducer, the force that believed only the strongest should survive, that existence should be simplified until nothing remained but an inevitable, eternal, final shape. The pattern was ancient and had repeated across countless civilizations on innumerable worlds. The traveler would arrive at a world or a solar system. It would uplift the species it found there, granting them advanced technologies, extending their lifespans, terraforming their worlds, giving them the tools to build something magnificent. For a time, these civilizations would thrive, entering their own golden ages, achieving heights they could never have reached alone. But then the darkness would come. The darkness did not merely destroy. It tested. It sought to prove its philosophy, that only the strongest deserved to exist. That complexity was weakness, that the final shape of the universe should be whatever could not be killed. The civilizations uplifted by the traveler, grown soft in their prosperity perhaps, or simply outmatched by forces beyond comprehension, would fall. And the traveler, faced with the overwhelming power of the darkness, would flee. Time and again across the cosmos, this dance had played out. The traveler uplifting, the darkness pursuing, civilizations rising and falling in the wake of this cosmic conflict. Before reaching humanity, the traveler had visited many species. It had been with the Ammonites on the moon of Fundament, granting them peace and prosperity, before the Hive, those servants of the darkness, descended upon them in waves of violence. It had been with the Harmony, a civilization that achieved wonders with the traveler's gifts before they too were consumed. Most recently, immediately before coming to humanity's solar system, The traveler had been with the Elixni, the species humanity would come to know by another name, the Fallen. The Elixni called the traveler the Great Machine, and under its protection, they entered their own golden age. They developed advanced technology, built magnificent cities, and thrived under the traveler's watchful presence. But when the darkness came, when the whirlwind descended upon the Elixni homeworld of Reese, the traveler did what it had always done. It fled. The Elixni civilization shattered. Their world burned. Those who survived became nomads, wandering the stars, chasing the traveler that had abandoned them, falling into piracy and desperation. They would eventually follow the traveler to Earth, but by then they had been transformed by suffering into something their Golden Age selves would barely recognize. For reasons that remain debated among scholars and philosophers, when the darkness finally caught up to the traveler in humanity's solar system, the pattern changed. The traveler made a choice. Whether that choice was strategic, moral, desperate, or some combination of factors we cannot fully understand, the result was unprecedented. This time, for the first time in its long history of fleeing, the traveler would stand and fight. Approximately 2 centuries into the Golden Age, around what we might estimate as the year 2214, the darkness arrived. The first detection came from beyond the edge of the solar system. Rasputin, the war mind, the artificial intelligence tasked with protecting humanity, detected what he classified as a transient, near extrasolar event. This sterile designation masked something terrifying. Rasputin's analysis determined that this phenomenon did not conform to any known particle physics. It was labeled a causal, existing outside the normal rules of cause and effect. It was directed, moving with purpose, and what Rasputin's algorithms interpreted as anger, and it was certain to reach the solar system imminently. The Skyshock alert was upgraded to OCP, extinction. Rasputin activated Twilight Exigent, a protocol designed to maximize human survivors in the face of an existential threat. In his cold, logical way, Rasputin began making terrible calculations. He concluded that information about the approaching threat needed to be controlled. When researchers at the New Pacific Arcology on Titan discovered evidence of the Black Fleet independent of Rasputin's own analyses, the Warmind made a brutal decision. Those researchers were killed, their discoveries silenced, their data destroyed. Rasputin judged that managing information and preventing panic was more important than those individual lives. It was the first of many dark choices that would define the collapse. Then the darkness arrived in full force. What followed would be known simply as the collapse, though that single word could never adequately capture the horror of what humanity experienced. Natural disasters tore across the solar system. On Earth, witnesses described the sky seeming to burn as orbital debris ignited. The ground split open with tremendous earthquakes. A sickly, unnatural darkness spread. Not the simple absence of light, but something actively wrong, a presence that smothered hope and twisted reality. On Titan, Saturn's moon, the approach of the darkness caused deformation of the ice crust. When the gravitational anomaly ceased, cataclysmic waves rendered the arcologies unsafe. The colony on Titan, home to countless souls, was abandoned in chaos and terror. Across the system, colonies went dark. Communication ceased. Millions, perhaps billions, died in those first terrible days. The Exodus program, humanity's desperate attempt to flee the solar system in colony ships, met with mixed results at best. One of these vessels was the Exodus Green, under the command of Captain Alice Lee. The ship held 900 crew and 40,000 passengers, refugees fleeing the collapse, hoping to find safety beyond the reach of the darkness. But as the Exodus Green attempted to escape, it found itself caught between two titanic forces. The traveler, making its stand, projected a beam of light to push back the darkness. The darkness resisted, projecting its own power in opposition. Where these two paracausal forces met, reality itself began to tear. A Kugelblitz formed, a black hole born from the collision of light and darkness. The Exodus Green and everyone aboard was pulled into this singularity. They should have died. Instead, something stranger occurred. They were transported to an unknown location they would later call the tributary, transformed by their passage through that impossible space. The humans aboard became something new, something changed by exposure to both light and dark. They became the Awoken, their skin taking on shades of blue and grey, their eyes glowing with an otherworldly light. The Awoken would develop their own civilization, separate from baseline humanity, and their story would intertwine with humanity's fate in complex ways. Other Exodus ships met different fates. Some vanished entirely, some were destroyed, some found refuge in distant places like Neptune, where survivors would eventually found the hidden city of Neomuna. Protected by secrets and technology humanity should not have possessed. But most of humanity had no escape. The colonies fell. Earth's expansion into the solar system, centuries of achievement and hope, collapsed in days or weeks. Humanity retreated to its homeworld, battered and broken, facing extinction. And then came the final confrontation, the battle between the traveler and the darkness over Earth itself. The details of this battle are fragmentary, preserved more in myth than in reliable historical record. What is known suggests a conflict on a scale difficult to comprehend. The traveler, which had fled from the darkness countless times before, which had abandoned the Elixni and every other species it had uplifted, chose to stay. It positioned itself over Earth, above the scattered survivors who huddled in makeshift shelters, and it fought. The darkness came in the form of the Black Fleet, pyramidal ships of impossible scale, each vessel a manifestation of the darkness's power. Leading this fleet was Resurrect, one of the disciples of the Witness, ancient servants of the darkness, wielding power that could shatter worlds. The traveler and the Black Fleet clashed. Light and dark met in a cosmic battle. The traveler projected its power, attempting to drive back the darkness. The pyramids responded with their own terrible might. Earth hung in the balance. But the traveler was not alone in its defense, though it may not have realized the help it received. Savathun, the Witch Queen, one of the hive gods who had long served the darkness, made a choice that would alter the course of history. For reasons of her own, whether from genuine conviction or cold calculation, Savathun betrayed Nezarec. She hid something called the Veil on Neptune, a mysterious object connected to both light and dark in ways not fully understood. More crucially, Savathun deceived the witness itself, tricking it into believing the traveler had been destroyed, convincing it to leave the solar system. The combination of the traveler's resistance and Savathun's deception achieved what the traveler alone might not have managed. The Black Fleet withdrew. Nezarec fell, his remains eventually entombed within his own pyramid on Luna, where they would slumber for centuries. The darkness retreated to the edges of the solar system and beyond, convinced that the traveler was gone, that this round of the ancient game had concluded. But the victory came at a terrible price. The traveler itself was gravely wounded. The effort of standing and fighting, the expenditure of power necessary to drive back the darkness, left the great sphere broken. Massive cracks scarred its white surface, and in its last act before falling into dormancy, the traveler performed a final, desperate miracle. It created the ghosts. This moment, the creation of the ghosts, represents perhaps the most important event in human history after the arrival of the traveler itself. The traveler, recognizing that it would soon be dormant, unable to defend humanity further, needed champions. It needed warriors who could wield its light, who could stand against the enemies that would come in the darkness's absence. But more than that, the traveler needed something that could persist through death, that could return again and again, learning and growing stronger with each battle. So in what might be described as the traveler's dying breath, though it was not truly death, but rather a deep sleep, it released countless ghosts into the world. Witnesses describe these ghosts as pinpricks of light, thousands upon thousands of them, falling like stars from the wounded traveler. Each ghost was a piece of the traveler itself, a fragment of its essence, wrapped in a shell of metal and light. These small machines, slightly larger than a human hand, consisted of a spherical core with a single glowing eye, surrounded by a shell of several pieces that could separate and rotate freely. The ghosts were more than simple machines. They were genuinely intelligent, possessing personalities, beliefs, opinions, and theories of their own. Each ghost had a purpose programmed into its very being. They were to search among the dead for specific individuals, people who matched certain criteria that even the ghosts themselves did not fully understand. When a ghost found such an individual, it would perform a resurrection, pulling that person back from death, reconstructing their body if necessary, and imbuing them with light. These resurrected individuals would become the first light bearers, eventually known as guardians. But this miracle came at a cost to the traveler itself. Accounts suggest that with each ghost created, the traveler lost a part of itself, sacrificing its own essence like fingers from a hand. This was described as the traveler giving away pieces of itself, constellations of martyrdom, traveling outward until they would eventually begin to go out one by one. And there was a belief among the ghosts, perhaps instinctive rather than taught, that when a ghost died, it would return to the traveler, a reunion with their creator, making the traveler whole again. After creating the ghost, the traveler entered a state of dormancy. It hung motionless in the sky above Earth, silent and unresponsive. Its shell, already cracked from battle, bore witness to the terrible price it had paid. The traveler would remain in this comatose state for centuries, offering no guidance, no communication, no further intervention. Humanity was on its own, protected only by the ghosts and the champions they would raise from the dead. The world that survived the collapse was almost unrecognizable from the one that had thrived during the Golden Age. This was the Dark Age, an era of suffering, chaos, and desperate survival that would last for centuries. The human population had been decimated. Entire colonies were gone, their populations dead or scattered. Technology that had seemed commonplace during the Golden Age was now precious and irreplaceable, its principles forgotten or lost. Cities lay in ruins, infrastructure collapsed, supply chains that had connected the solar system shattered. Survivors huddled in small groups, scavenging among the remains of their former civilization, struggling simply to find food and shelter and safety. Earth became a dangerous place, not only because of the collapse of civilization, but because it was no longer humanity's alone. The fallen arrived, following the traveler they had once revered and now resented. These Elixni, driven by desperation and rage, established themselves in the ruins of human cities, scavenging technology, organizing into houses under Kells, Archons, and prime servitors. They viewed humanity as thieves who had stolen the great machine that should have been theirs. On the moon, the hive had been awakened or had arrived during the collapse. These nightmare creatures, servants of the darkness and the worm gods, built their fortress in the lunar depths. They represented something more terrible than simple hostile aliens. The hive embodied a philosophy of existence based on the sword logic, the belief that the right to exist must be proven through violence, that only the strong deserve to survive. On Venus and Mars, the Vex maintained their mysterious presence. These machine minds, capable of converting entire planets into computational substrate, pursued agendas incomprehensible to human minds. They had existed since the Golden Age, perhaps before, and their relationship to the collapse remained unclear. On Mars, the Cabal had established beachheads during the collapse itself. These militaristic aliens, organized into a vast interstellar empire, saw the weakened humanity and claimed territory for themselves. They brought overwhelming force and discipline, treating war as a science to be perfected. Humanity, scattered and weak, seemed doomed to extinction. But the ghosts changed everything. They traveled among the refugee columns, searching, always searching. They scanned the dead, analyzing patterns that they could sense but not fully articulate, looking for individuals who matched their criteria. The process was individual and intimate. Each ghost would bond with a single guardian, and that bond was permanent. A ghost could not transfer its light to another guardian once that connection was made. When a ghost found its chosen one, the resurrection was both miraculous and strange. The individual, who might have been dead for days, years, or even centuries, would be brought back to life with no memory of who they had been. Their past lives, their identities, their relationships, all of it was gone, erased as a consequence of the resurrection. They woke into a world they did not know, wielding powers they did not understand, for purposes they had yet to discover. The first of these resurrected individuals, these light bearers, began to appear across Earth. They possessed extraordinary abilities. They could wield the light in 3 elemental forms: solar light, manifesting as burning fire and explosive force; arc light, appearing as electricity and crackling energy; and void light, the power of controlled nothingness, creating shields and devastating implosions. These powers made the light bearers formidable. They could channel the light through their weapons, making every shot more deadly. They could manifest abilities that seemed impossible, hurling balls of lightning, creating walls of flame, generating protective barriers from nothing. Most importantly, the light bearers could not permanently die, not while their ghosts survived. If a light bearer fell in battle, their ghost could resurrect them, pulling them back from death, restoring their body and their strength. This made them effectively immortal, at least in theory. They could learn from their failures, could return to battles that had killed them, could persist where ordinary humans would have long since perished. But immortality and power did not automatically create heroes. The earliest light bearers, lacking guidance from the silent traveler, lacking a unified purpose or command structure, became something other than saviors. They were called the Risen, and many of them chose not to protect humanity, but to rule it. The Dark Age saw the emergence of warlord societies across Earth. These Risen, wielding their incredible powers and armed with their immortality, established petty kingdoms. They claimed territories, demanding tribute from mortal survivors in exchange for protection. The protection was real. A warlord could defend a settlement from fallen raids, could clear hive from nearby areas, could ensure a degree of safety. But the price was often brutal. Mortals had to obey, had to provide resources, had to acknowledge the warlord's absolute authority. Some warlords were relatively benevolent, taking their role as protectors seriously. Others were tyrants, using their power for personal gain, treating mortals as resources to be exploited. The warlords fought each other constantly, battling over territory and resources, settling disputes through violence. One warlord was documented as having used a nuclear weapon in a raid to steal livestock, a testament to the casual brutality that characterized the age. The mortal population suffered under these conditions, caught between the threat of alien enemies and the often arbitrary rule of immortal warlords. Many began to refer to these light bearers not as the Risen, but by a name that carried more bitter irony: the Guardians, those who were supposed to protect, but often did not. Not all Risen became warlords. Some, disturbed by what they witnessed, sought a different path. They believed that the light should be used for genuine protection, that power came with responsibility, that immortality should serve more than personal ambition. These individuals began to organize, to resist the warlords, to fight for a vision of what the Risen could become. Among these reformers, certain names would become legendary. Rezil Azir, possibly one of the earliest Guardians, fought the fallen and defended refugees, though his ultimate fate would take a dark turn. The Iron Lords, a group of Risen who banded together under ideals of justice and protection, emerged as a major force for change. Leaders like Radagast, Saladin Forge, Perun, and Jolder rallied others to their cause. They confronted warlords, offering them a choice: join us in protecting humanity or face us in battle. Many warlords, faced with the combined might of the Iron Lords, chose to surrender and reform. Others, like the warlord Segoth, fought and were killed, their ghosts destroyed to ensure they could not return. One notable convert was Felwinter, an exo-warlord who changed sides out of a genuine desire for peace and security. His defiance of the other warlords gave the Iron Lords greater credibility and power. Slowly, through years of conflict and negotiation, the Iron Lords and those who shared their vision began to shift the culture of the Risen. Being a Lightbearer started to mean something more than personal power. It began to carry expectations of service, of sacrifice, of using one's abilities to defend the weak rather than dominate them. Parallel to the Iron Lords, other groups emerged with similar ideals. The Pilgrim Guard, dedicated to protecting refugees and guiding them to safety. Takenomi's Rangers, named for the legendary Ayane Takenome, who led efforts to defend survivors before the Guardians became commonplace. These organizations understood that humanity needed more than warriors. It needed guides, protectors who would ensure that scattered survivors could reach safe havens. The greatest of these safe havens would eventually become the Last City. The location that would house the Last City was not the first place humans tried to gather under the Traveler's shadow. The Traveler hovered over Earth, motionless and silent, but its presence still offered some protection. Perhaps the aura it emitted deterred the worst threats. Perhaps the symbolic hope it represented drew people together. Whatever the reason, refugees began to migrate toward the Traveler, hoping to find safety beneath it. Early attempts to establish a permanent settlement failed. Warlords claimed the territory. Alien raids drove survivors away. Internal conflicts between factions tore communities apart. Many places tried to claim the name Last City, only to fall to violence or chaos. But in South America, in a location that later evidence suggests might be near where Santiago, Chile once stood, a more lasting foundation began to emerge. The Iron Lords, at the height of their power and influence, secured this territory. They began guiding disparate human populations to gather there, using their strength to ensure safe passage for refugees from across the world. This time, the city would last. The walls were built, massive fortifications raised by the first Titan orders, Lightbearers who specialized in defense and strength, who could work stone and metal through a combination of traditional engineering and light-enhanced power. These walls would become legendary, standing against countless assaults over the centuries to come. Within the walls, a society began to take shape. Humans, awoken, who had returned from the reef, and exos who emerged from the ruins with their memories shattered, all came together. The city was not orderly at first. Different factions vied for control, each with their own ideology about how humanity should be governed, what the relationship between mortals and Lightbearers should be, what the path forward looked like. These tensions erupted into what became known as the faction wars, violent conflicts where different groups fought for dominance. The Risen, still not universally calling themselves guardians, served as enforcers for these factions, their immortality making them devastating combatants in urban warfare. The faction wars threatened to tear the city apart before it could truly establish itself. But eventually, a resolution emerged. The factions agreed to form a consensus, a governing body where disputes would be settled through committee and debate rather than violence. Representatives from the major factions would have seats, and critically, a military arm would be established, separate from factional control, dedicated purely to the defense of the city. This military arm was called the Vanguard. The Vanguard would be led by 3 commanders, one for each of the 3 major approaches to wielding the light that had emerged among the Risen. These approaches had crystallized into distinct traditions, different philosophies of combat, and different relationships with the light. The Titans, who emphasized strength and resilience, who built the walls and held the line, who believed in meeting enemies head-on with overwhelming force, tempered by discipline. The Warlocks, who studied the lighter scholars, studied any force of nature, who sought to understand its principles and unlock new applications, who wielded it with precision and creativity. The Hunters, who moved with speed and stealth, who scouted beyond the walls, who struck from the shadows and disappeared before the enemy could respond. These were not rigid categories determined by birth or resurrection. Rather, they were traditions that Risen chose to follow, philosophies they adopted based on temperament and teaching. A guardian could theoretically learn techniques from multiple traditions, though most specialized in one approach. With the consensus established and the vanguard created, the settlement beneath the traveler finally had the stability to call itself the last city, without irony. This marked the end of the Dark Age and the beginning of the City Age. The years that followed saw the city grow and strengthen. The population increased as refugees continued to arrive. Trade networks were established with settlements beyond the walls. The vanguard organized guardians into a more professional fighting force, assigning them to operations, directing their efforts towards securing humanity's future rather than pursuing personal agendas. The city faced many crises during its early years. The Battle of Six Fronts saw multiple fallen houses attack the city simultaneously from 6 different approaches. The battle was desperate, but the Guardians, fighting together under vanguard coordination, repelled the assault decisively. This victory solidified the vanguard's authority and demonstrated that organized guardians could overcome threats that would have destroyed the scattered warlord kingdoms of the Dark Age. Other legendary battles followed. The Great Disaster, when guardians attempted to retake the moon from the Hive and suffered catastrophic losses, taught painful lessons about hubris and the limits of light. The Twilight Gap, when the fallen houses united in another massive assault on the city, saw heroes like Lord Shaxx and Saint 14 achieving legendary status through their defense. But between these great battles, Guardians worked constantly. They patrolled the wilds, protecting settlements beyond the walls. They explored the ruins of the Golden Age, recovering technology and knowledge. They pushed back the Hive, the Fallen, the Vex, and the Cabal, establishing zones of relative safety around the city. They ventured to other worlds, reclaiming pieces of humanity's lost empire, ensuring that Earth's moon, Mars, and Venus would not be entirely lost to alien occupation. The Guardians developed their own culture during this time. The Hunters, descended from the tradition of scouts and rangers, valued independence and personal skill. They were competitive, often boasting about their achievements, but they were also the eyes and ears of the city, venturing farthest from the walls. The Titans, inheritors of the philosophy of the Iron Lords, and the first wall builders, valued duty and sacrifice. They saw themselves as the shield of the city, the last line of defense, the ones who would never retreat. The Warlocks, who studied the light with scholarly dedication, valued knowledge and understanding. They maintained libraries, conducted research, sought to unlock the secrets of the Golden Age and the nature of the light itself. The three traditions developed friendly rivalries, arguing about whose approach was most effective, competing in training exercises and in the crucible, the combat arena where Guardians honed their skills against each other. But when the city was threatened, these rivalries dissolved. Guardians fought together, combining their different strengths, proving that diversity of approach created resilience. The Guardians also maintained connection to their origins through certain institutions. The Iron Banner, a competition held regularly, honored the memory of the Iron Lords, allowing Guardians to prove themselves in combat under the watchful eye of Lord Saladin, one of the last surviving Iron Lords. The Speaker, a figure who claimed to hear the traveler's voice in dreams and visions, served as a spiritual leader, interpreting the will of the silent sphere above them. Whether the speaker genuinely communicated with the traveler or simply believed he did, remained a question without a definitive answer. But the guidance he provided helped give Guardians a sense of purpose beyond mere survival. The Guardians understood, even if they did not speak of it often, that they were something unprecedented. They were the dead raised to fight for the living. They had no memories of their past lives, no connection to who they had been before their ghosts found them. They existed in a perpetual present, defined by their actions rather than their histories. Some Guardians wondered about their past lives, about the people they had been, about the families they might have left behind. The pursuit of such knowledge was often discouraged. The vanguard understood that Guardians who became too attached to their past identities might lose focus on their current duties. Better to move forward than to dwell on what was lost. Yet the mystery remained. Why had each ghost chosen its particular guardian? What criteria determined who could be resurrected? The ghosts themselves did not fully know. They could sense something, a quality or potential that marked certain dead as suitable, but they could not articulate what that quality was. Some theorized it was devotion, bravery, and sacrifice, qualities that the traveler valued. Others suggested it was simpler, a compatibility between the ghost's light and the individual's fundamental nature. The truth, if there was a single truth, remained hidden. What was clear was that Guardians came from all walks of life. Some had been warriors before their resurrection. Others had been scientists, artists, or ordinary citizens. Some had been noble. Others had been criminals, death, and resurrection erased those distinctions. A guardian was judged not by who they had been, but by what they chose to do with their second chance at life. The relationship between guardians and mortal humans was complex. The mortals looked to guardians as protectors, as heroes, as the barrier between civilization and extinction. They built statues honoring fallen guardians, told stories of legendary battles, treated the vanguard commanders with reverence approaching worship. But there was also distance. Guardians were immortal, or as close to immortal as made no practical difference. They did not age. They did not fear death in the way mortals did. This created a gulf of experience and perspective. Mortals lived their entire lives knowing each day brought them closer to an ending. Guardians had no such certainty, no such pressure. Some mortals resented this. They saw guardians as having been given an unfair gift, a freedom from mortality's weight. Some feared guardians, knowing that these immortal warriors could, if they chose, become new warlords, could seize power that no mortal force could resist. The memory of the warlord era was not so distant that the possibility seemed impossible. But most mortals simply accepted guardians as a fact of life, as the strange reality of their world. The city had guardians to defend it. Those guardians were odd, often arrogant, sometimes reckless, but they stood between the city and its enemies. That was enough. For their part, guardians developed varying relationships with mortality. Some maintained close ties with mortal communities, adopting families in an informal sense, passing knowledge down through generations, even as they themselves did not age. Others withdrew, spending their time with other guardians, finding it difficult to form attachments to people who would age and die while they persisted. Some guardians became almost alien in their thinking, detached from mortal concerns, focused purely on combat and duty. Others retained or developed a profound appreciation for mortal life precisely because they remembered what it was to die, even if they could not remember their own deaths. The traveler remained silent through all of this. Decades passed, then centuries, and the great white sphere never moved, never spoke, never gave any sign that it was aware of the civilization growing in its shadow. Some believed the traveler was dead, that it had expended all its power in creating the ghosts, that it would never awaken. Others believed it was merely sleeping, recovering from its wounds, and would someday return to consciousness. The speaker claimed to receive dreams and visions from the traveler, messages about hope and struggle and the importance of the light. But these messages were vague, poetic, offering no concrete guidance. The traveler's silence became a defining feature of the city age. Guardians fought in the traveler's name, defended the city. The traveler watched over, wielded the light traveler had granted through the ghosts, but they did so without any certainty about the traveler's nature, its intentions, its ultimate goals. Was the traveler a machine, a god, an alien so advanced that the distinction did not matter? Did it act with conscious intention, or according to programming so complex it appeared intentional? No one knew for certain. This ambiguity troubled some and comforted others. Those who wanted to see the traveler as divine could interpret its silence as a test, a challenge to prove humanity worthy of its gifts. Those who preferred to see it as a tool could focus on the practical benefits it had provided without worrying about worship or purpose. And those who were uncertain could simply focus on the tasks at hand, protecting the city, pushing back the darkness's servants, reclaiming the solar system one hard-won victory at a time. The ghost that each guardian carried served as a constant link to the traveler, a piece of its essence that never left their side. Ghosts were more than tools or weapons. They were companions, advisors, friends. Each ghost developed its own personality through its experiences with its guardian. Some were cheerful and optimistic. Others were serious and focused. Some were curious, constantly asking questions and seeking to understand. Others were cautious, warning their guardians about dangers and urging care. The bond between guardian and ghost was unique among all relationships. They shared experiences no one else could understand. The ghost witnessed every death, every resurrection, every moment of triumph and failure. The ghost knew the guardian better than anyone, better perhaps than the guardian knew themselves. In return, guardians protected their ghosts, knowing that if the ghost died, the guardian would lose their immortality, would become vulnerable to permanent death. The destruction of a ghost was one of the few things that truly frightened guardians. Stories circulated of guardians who had lost their ghosts, either to enemy action or tragic accident, and who had chosen to continue fighting despite knowing each battle might be their last. These guardians, living on borrowed time, often accomplished remarkable things in the time they had left, as though the certainty of death gave their actions a weight and meaning that immortality had diluted. As the centuries of the city age accumulated, the city became more than a survival strategy. It became home, a beacon of human civilization preserved against impossible odds. The people who lived there, mortal and guardian alike, built something worth defending. They created art and music and literature. They formed families and communities. They remembered the golden age while building a future that might one day rival it. They did all of this in the shadow of the traveler, beneath the silent witness that had given them the tools to survive, but left them to determine what survival would mean. The guardians understood, though they rarely spoke of it directly, that they were transitional figures. They had been raised to defend humanity through its darkest hours, to hold the line until the species could stand on its own again. But what would happen when that day came? Would guardians still be needed? Would they be welcomed? Or would they become reminders of a terrible age best forgotten? These questions had no answers in the centuries following the collapse. The Dark Age had given way to the City Age, but the future remained uncertain. The traveler's silence continued. The enemies surrounding the city showed no signs of relenting. The darkness that had caused the collapse remained at the edges of known space, retreating but not vanquished. Guardians continued to die and resurrect, fight and protect, question and endure. The story of the traveler's arrival and the birth of the guardians is ultimately a story about hope persisting through catastrophe. Humanity reached for the stars during the Golden Age, and was struck down for its presumption, or perhaps simply caught in a conflict far older and vaster than our species could comprehend. We should have gone extinct. The mathematics of survival suggested we had no chance. But the traveler's final gift, the creation of the ghosts, and through them the guardians, gave humanity a chance we did not deserve and had no right to expect. The guardians, risen from death, with no memory of who they had been, became the defenders we needed. They were not perfect. Many started as warlords and tyrants. Others struggled with the weight of immortality and power, but enough of them chose to be better, to use their gifts in service of something larger than themselves, to build rather than simply survive. The journey from the collapse to the founding of the last city took centuries. It required sacrifice from both the living and the dead made living. It demanded that humanity rebuild not just its population and infrastructure, but its sense of purpose and community. The traveler provided the tools, the light and the ghosts, and the resurrection. But humanity and its guardian defenders did the work, made the choices, accepted the costs. In the sky above the last city, the traveler remains, cracked and silent, a monument to both what was lost and what was saved. Beneath it, humanity persists, defended by warriors who died once and refused to let their species die at all. This is the foundation of destiny, the moment when everything changed. The arrival of the traveler lifted humanity to heights we had never imagined. The collapse brought us lower than we had ever fallen, and the birth of the guardians gave us a chance to rise again. The story does not end here. The guardians would face the hive god Crota and his father Oryx. They would uncover secrets of the Vex and their reality-warping powers. They would battle the Cabal as that empire turned its full attention toward Earth. They would eventually confront the darkness directly as it returned to finish what it started during the collapse. But all of those conflicts, all of those revelations and struggles and victories and losses build upon the foundation laid in those desperate centuries after the Golden Age fell. Without the traveler's arrival, humanity would never have reached the stars. Without the collapse, we would not have been tested and tempered. Without the birth of the guardians, we would not have survived. These three events, arrival, collapse, and rebirth, form the bedrock of Destiny's universe. They answer the question of how humanity came to fight for survival in a solar system full of enemies, defended by immortal warriors wielding impossible powers, watched over by a silent sphere that may be a god, a machine, or something beyond either category. As you drift towards sleep, perhaps you can imagine standing beneath the traveler in those early days, watching the ghosts descend like falling stars, seeing the first risen stumble from death into a world that needs them desperately, feeling the hope that refuses to die even when everything else has fallen. That hope, fragile and fierce, carried through the Dark Age and built the last city. That hope continues to burn in every guardian who answers the call, who picks up a weapon, who stands on the wall, who ventures into the dark places of the world to ensure the light survives. The traveler may be silent, but its gift speaks through every guardian who refuses to let humanity's story end in darkness. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the lore of destiny. If you found this exploration of the traveler's arrival and the birth of the Guardians enlightening, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel for more deep dives into the stories that help us dream. Until next time, may your rest be peaceful, and may you always remember that even in the darkest age, hope can be reborn. Sleep well, Guardian.